Hello FlossTube and welcome to part 8. Can you believe it? 8 of the Celebration of Colour Stitch Along. I am Ros Clark. This is Ros Clark Craft here on YouTube, and you'll also find me as Ros Clark Craft on Instagram and on Etsy. Just to say, if you do want to make sure you always get the next part of the chart as soon as it's available, Instagram is the place to be. I knew this video, you'll see there's been more preparation for this video than for some, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to get the video filmed on Saturday. I'm filming it Sunday morning. It needed to be filmed when there was at least some daylight, because I really do need you to be able to see the differences that I'm talking about in the colours. But the chart has been available since last thing on Saturday. It is always obviously the same download link on that link tree. So you can always check if you're not sure, if you're not on Instagram, you're not sure whether the chart is available. You just check the same link and you'll see the new part is always right at the top if you want to find it there. So this week we are on to green. I have stitched green. I feel like last time when we introduced yellow green, we'd done 6 parts, which is half of the colour wheel, and almost whichever 6 you choose, when you move on to 7, you're starting to then have colours which are directly opposite each other on the colour wheel, and it begins to feel very different. And it certainly felt very different. I know 1 or 2 people noticed this when they did part 7, and obviously part 8, moving on to adding green, not just yellow green, even more so. It begins to feel, I think, more rounded, fuller. It does add a very different feel to it. You know, we had all those sort of sunsetty colours from the red, purple all the way around to orange and yellow, and now we've definitely got a sort of, I don't know, when I was doing it on my first model, put a picture of the model stitch when I first did it here with the sort of bright primary tone colours, the green felt like it was making it fresher. And I'm not sure you quite say that of this more muted palette that I'm doing for my second version, but it definitely adds a different depth to the colour. And do keep paying attention to how the colours are relating to each other. In particular, I think I mentioned this last time, this column where you're doing the little boxes and fill-ins, do make sure you have a look at the 2 different versions. So you will be getting, for each pair of complementary colours on the wheel, that is to say the ones directly opposite, one of them being the box in the inside, and then also the other way around. And it does make a difference, I think. I think it makes a difference because, let me see if I can just show you mine a little bit closer up. I'm not sure you can really tell from this, but look at yours if you're doing it. Whichever colour is on the outside is also interacting with the background colour, which will probably be white or a sort of pale neutral, depending on exactly what fabric you've chosen. And that will interact with that colour in a different sort of way, whereas the inside colour is only interacting with the outside colour. The outside colour is interacting with both the inside colour and the background colour, and it will give it a different sort of feel to it in the way that we've been thinking about colour interaction. But the other thing, of course, is that you've got a lot more stitches of the outside colour, so it is going to dominate. And one of the things we're going to be talking about today is how density of stitch and just proportion of stitch, proportion of colour, density of colour can really make a difference to how we perceive the colour. So that's green. You'll see you're filling in a bit more of these black outlines, and then you're just filling in all of green. We don't have any, no, that's not true. We have almost none left of our yellow frame with its coloured intersections. You should be able to see a few little 1-stitch intersections around the place, and we will be filling those in a subsequent week. But that is green. I really hope those of you who are stitching along, I mean, I'm sure if you're still stitching along, it's because you are enjoying it. And it's been really great to hear so many people say, actually, it's a fun stitch, and you know, they look forward to the chart being released and, you know, get on with it immediately in order to see what will happen. And that's really what I was hoping for as we went through part by part, is that even where, you know, a lot of the design at this point is obviously very, you know, you could probably work out where quite a lot of the colours are going to go next. There are some places where it's not as clear as others. But even so, what you can't yet see is how the new colours are going to interact with the ones that are already there. And so, you know, I hope it does feel like it's exciting to stitch every week and just see what difference it makes as we add in each colour. Obviously, this kind of colour completion method is something you can do with any cross stitch, although I wouldn't recommend it for all cross stitch patterns. I wouldn't do it for your, you know, Heaven and Earth Designs full coverage maximum piece. Don't do colour completion for that. But actually, for quite a lot of designs, you can, particularly if you're willing to do counting. And it is a really interesting process. Really interesting to see how adding in each colour affects the whole design. So, you know, if you pick a piece, if you're stitching a piece, you think, actually, I could do colour completion on this, go for it and see where you end up. Right, so that's our stitch along piece. So what am I talking about today? Well, I have got stuff that I prepared that fell on the floor. That never happened in Blue Peter, did it? It probably did happen in Blue Peter. So what I wanted to do this week is talk about two things: background fabric and density of stitching. I think we're going to do density of stitching first. So for this, I've used a piece of vintage country mocha, but I've stitched on the back, so it's plain. Obviously, when you're dealing with hand-dyed, hand-painted fabrics, you know, the background fabric will change slightly. So I thought, well, we'll do it on things that have just a single flat colour, just to make it easier to see. And I think what I want to do, so what I've taken is 3 shades of green. These are just DMC shades of green. That's an entirely inaccurate colour representation of them. That's slightly better, but a bit in shadow. So I've got, if you've got DMC or you've got a colour chart, you can look up. These are 733. That's a very yellow green. 730, which is, I think it is still in the yellow-green family. It's a little bit browner, I think, but it's certainly darker than 733. And then 936, and this is a little bit more into the blue-green family. And hopefully that'll become clear as we go on. In fact, what I want to start by doing is just showing you those skeins of floss against the fabric before I show you what I have prepared earlier. So let's see how well we can see this. In fact, I'm going to put it this way around. Okay, that is a much better representation of the colours, so that's good. Okay, so we've got the yellowish one, the sort of darker yellowish brownish one, and the bluish one. Hopefully, if you've got a piece of vintage country mocha lying around, or whatever the non-vintage version of it is, I think this back of the vintage country mocha is that you can get just in a plane, and you could even try it yourself lying out. There's going to be a lot of dropping. Anyway, laying out the 3 colours on it so you can see. Now, vintage country mocha, I would say it is a brown. It's a slightly pinkish brown. I don't know that it particularly leans yellow. It certainly doesn't lean blue or green. So, you know, they all stand out, I think, pretty well against that fabric. Now, let me show you the first line of my stitching. Ta-da. Okay. So there are 6 stitch triangles, not 3. And that is because I have stitched, well, I want you to have a look at them. Now, I don't know that you can see that brilliantly, but I wonder if you can see differences between the pairs of triangles. Okay, well, I will tell you what you are looking at, and you may have to take it on trust after all that this is what's going on. Each triangle is stitched just with the flosses that I showed you, same number of stitches, same fabric, obviously. But on the one on this side, let me just remove my needle. The one on this side, stitched with one strand of floss, and this side with two. And what I can see very clearly, and you may just about be able to tell, is that the one on this side looks lighter than the one on that side. In person, you would almost believe that they were different shades of floss. Now they aren't. Oh, there you go. I think that shows it quite clearly. Let's try again. Nice and close up. Yeah, my camera is desperately trying to correct everything, and therefore it may not be completely clear. But what I think you get, now you will have all done this, I'm sure, tried stitching with one strand of floss, decided it's not enough, tried stitching with two, decided you don't like it. And obviously what happens when you're stitching with one strand of floss, the coverage is less, and therefore you do get little bits of the background fabric showing through. And your eye, unless you are looking very closely, or unless you're doing sort of one strand of floss on 14 count Aida or 10 count Aida, your eye perceives it and sort of processes it as one block of colour and sort of merges the background colour into the floss colour. And that can work really well. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment, I haven't got it here to show you, and I'm not going to get it out, but in my Gecko Rouge that I'm doing, it is full coverage. The whole piece has a sort of pinkish tone to it. And I decided, and I think it's working really well actually, to substitute the white Aida that came with the kit for a piece of hand-dyed Aida from Roxy Floss Co. in, you know, really lovely bright pinkish tone. And what it's doing is it's just giving that undertone to all of the stitching that will bring it all together really beautifully. It also means that I might not stitch all the background, which is the other advantage of it. But a background piece of fabric can really work to bring flosses together, particularly when you are doing a less dense stitch. If you're doing a more dense stitch, because what you really want is all the colours to be incredibly distinct, yeah, then that's why you would do a more dense stitch, if you want all the colours to be incredibly distinct. But if you want something that's actually melding together, you do a less dense stitch, allow the background fabric to become part of all the colours, and it will merge them together. But I just think it's really fascinating to see how our brains process that. Yeah, I really don't know how much of this you can see. But anyway, my brain definitely processes these two triangles as different colours, and then these two, and then these two, when I see the piece in real life. So that's one strand and two strands. What I also want to show you is how this works with fewer stitches. So here, this one single stitch of one strand fades really into the background. I can see it's there, but it really doesn't look as distinct as this. It doesn't look as bright as this, or as dark as this, as distinct as this. Now, as these colours get slightly darker and more contrasting with the background, that is less true. But you can sort of imagine if this was sort of dotted around all over the place, you'd see that they were there, but it wouldn't dominate. Your eye wouldn't be drawn to it. Maybe something like this one dotted around, your eye would be drawn to that, and you would notice that a lot more because the contrast is greater. But one way you can, one way when you're thinking about colours that you need to process them, we talked about this last time, is thinking about where they appear and what they're doing. And are they in big blocks of colour, or individual stitches, or, you know, smaller areas will make a difference to the way that your brain processes that colour. So, next piece of background fabric, this is something, 32 count something, I can't remember. It has, you can see there, the Vintage Country Mocha, a more pinkish tone. This definitely has a more yellowish tone in person. No, which again you can't see. And I wonder what you think about how those colours react to that. This bluish one, I think, looks very dark. This one, very much tending more towards a brownish green. Still quite dark, but quite brownish. And the yellowish one, yellow green, really bringing out the yellow tone of it. Now, let's try and compare. Oh, I just don't know that I can get this to show you the distinctions that I can see. Okay, let's focus on one thing. So it's the same colour floss, stitched with one strand, over not exactly the same count, but not far off. I think this is 32 and that might be 18. So yeah, like a 36. So let's put those two together. And that is entirely not showing the colours as they are. So that's not helpful at all. And maybe if I knew how to work my camera better, we could sort that out. Okay, let's just try it with the third one I did on a bluish background fabric. Again, I'm sorry, I don't know what this is. It's also a 32 count, and I also stitched it with one strand. Let's put those three like that. Okay, I think I am going to have to try and take some photos to see if I can show you exactly, and it'll be easier to wrangle the fabric, frankly, as well at that point. Okay, I can't see what's on the screen. There we are. Okay. I don't think this one looks yellowish at all against the blue background. It kind of looks murky and muddy. Against the yellowish background, to me, it looks a much brighter yellowy green, and against this sort of pinkish brown, closest to its original tone. This is the floss. Oh, it's just not showing. Okay, well, I'm afraid you're going to have to take some of this on trust unless I can get good photos. I'm going to try it with the bluish one because I think in real life that shows the biggest contrast, and we'll just see whether I can manage to show you any of that. Oh, it's so frustrating because it really is very distinct on here. Okay, so this is the bluish green. And to me, what I see on this bluish fabric, the blueness of the green really comes out, and it's really lovely, actually. On this one, less of the blue is coming out, much more greenish, but actually sort of a murky brownish, because what we're getting is a blue-green that's, yeah, and even more so on this one, really, with the sort of pinkish brown. The blue-green is mixing with a sort of pinkish background colour. It's just murky. Whereas here, all the colours in both the floss and the fabric are in the same area of the colour wheel. Okay, I'm going to show you. I don't know what you can see. I'm going to take some photos and hopefully insert those. What I think is working, and it's not that any of these are wrong. It's not that you can't use a yellowish green floss on a bluish background fabric. Just be prepared for what it's going to look. I mean, it does stand out really well. It just doesn't look like a lovely yellowish green. It looks like a slightly murky olive. This one doesn't really look like a darker yellowish green. It looks like a really murky brown. Be a really nice colour in certain places. This one, much clearer because it's not mixing with anything that's contrasting against it, gives you a really nice bluish green. Well, I feel like I did a lot of preparation to be entirely let down by my camera work. So what I encourage you to do is try the same experiment. It didn't take long, a couple of hours yesterday evening, and it was really interesting. So choose 3 flosses. You could choose the same 3 DMC as me if you want, or doesn't matter. 3 greens, yellowish, yellow green, blue green, middle green. You could even take the ones you're doing for your stitch along if you're doing the stitch along, and choose 3 fabrics, one with a bluish background, one with a yellowish background, and one with something that's neither. Probably not a white at this point. So, you know, try and find something that's maybe a greyish neutral, or like this one, a slightly pinkish toned neutral. And do a little square. I did an 8x8 square of each colour on each of the 3 background fabrics, and see what you notice. I will try and put some fixtures in that will help you see what I can see. Good, thank you so much for watching. Next time I want to talk about variegated floss, and to some extent the much more variegated background fabrics, but particularly variegated floss. So happy stitching. Next time we'll be on to blue green. So we're at that point, you know, we'll have kind of so what's amazing this week, part 8 is 2/3. Next week part 9 will be 3/4, and we will be fully into all 3 of our primary colors. We've sort of done the whole red section, the whole of the yellow section, and next week is where we're going to begin in our sort of blue section of the color wheel. So it's exciting. I'll see you next time.